Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Master of the Abyss, Painted Souls, book number 3 by Rob Samborn. And this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. 1702 AD, Republic of Venice. Shadows flickered off damp walls. A single oil lamp clenched in a sweaty fist illuminated the dark corridor. Manuel Quattrone tightened his grip on a wheel-lock pistol to steady his nerves. Behind him, 3 men matched his pace. Each wielded 2 primed flintlocks and a sheathed rapier. Moments prior, they'd used their swords to dispatch 6 protectors patrolling the Palazzo Ducale, inside and out. The blades enabled silent deaths for a stealth entry. The firearms were required for the bullet's speed. A flintlock was also holstered on Emmanuel's hip. He prayed one of their weapons would find its target. "This way, friends," Emmanuel whispered in Venetian. "We're almost there." The narrow underground passageway necessitated that they travel in single file, and the corridor's curvature limited visibility to a mere 10 paces. All 4 men had trained their bodies for this moment. Their thin, muscular frames flew past the rough ashlar stone walls. Rank air and mildew stifled their breathing. The leather jerkin beneath Emmanuel's brown petticoat chafed against his skin. Still, he soldiered on, leading his meager squadron through the palazzo's bowels. Emmanuel paused at a T-junction. He relied on memory, recalling the map passed down to him from his great-great-grandfather. That illustrious man was the first exalted master of the ancient order of the Seventh Son, before he was betrayed by his own and sentenced to Paradiso in 1614. If they turned east, the passageway would have reached a stairwell to the great council room, home to Paradiso and the souls within. The westward path led them to the warden of the souls, the painter, Jacopo Tintoretto. It led to vengeance and an end to the madness. Emmanuel didn't hesitate. The order needed to be demolished. He'd been waiting all of his 42 years for this moment. So far, everything had gone to plan, yet his heart rattled. Perspiration drenched his shirt. As members of the order, Emmanuel and his colleagues had beheld the fantastic. They were privy to truths of this world few would believe. Each person on earth was gifted a single soul that traveled through 7 lives. Upon conclusion of the 7th, one's soul faced final judgment, ascension, or eradication. Except the painters. Emmanuel also witnessed corruption, crimes against nobility and commoners alike. None epitomized the venality like Jacopo Tintoretto. Imbued with the power of the sun crystal, he was one of 3 who'd been gifted an extended lifespan. Tintoretto has been a Renaissance giant, but that did not justify his continued being. He was an abomination, a curse on Christ himself. Only the Lord should live beyond this lifespan of a mortal man. At 184 years of age, Tintoretto should have been worm food. His most grievous sin was taking hundreds of lives, souls now confined for eternity in his duplicitous masterpiece, Paradiso. Emmanuel made the sign of the cross with his pistol hand. Wrongs would be righted. A rustle on the ground prompted him to halt. His compatriots followed suit. A rat scurried by, demons spawned fleeing from the mouth of hell. Releasing a breath, Emmanuel continued for 20 more paces until an oak door blocked the passageway, like the goal of Daedalus's labyrinth. Who was more dangerous, the Minotaur or the painter? Emmanuel beckoned his men closer to the door. He was told the painter's living quarters would be locked from the outside, but that was not the case. Apparently, Tintoretto was free to come and go. That posed a new problem. Should the door be sealed from the inside, they'd have no means of entry. Emmanuel raised the lantern. Shadow and tricorn hats shrouded his companion's features, but concern glazed their eyes. "We've come too far to fail, my friends," Emmanuel whispered. "We've lost too many." They nodded their agreement. After setting the lantern on the ground, Emmanuel wrapped his free hand around the door handle. Footsteps and angry voices reverberated from the far end of the corridor. "We're discovered!" his comrade whispered. Emmanuel's bones quivered with the unmistakable gnawing ache of desperation. It wasn't a labyrinth. It was a death trap. With a silent prayer, he pressed the thumb latch and cracked the door. All exhaled relief. He threw the door open. His friend squeezed past and rushed in, pistols at the ready. Slipping inside, Emmanuel slammed the door shut and slid the bolt across the frame. "Welcome, brethren." Tintoretto's spry, deep voice belayed his ears. He stood at an easel in the far corner with his back to the entrance. Lush, silvery hair cascaded over a white linen robe on a petite frame. But the painter was anything but diminutive. His presence dominated the space. "We should talk," he said. The men froze, unsure of what to do. Emmanuel took stock of his environs. The room was smaller than he'd imagined, especially for a man not only central to the order but worshipped by them. A dozen candles cast golden light on cluttered living conditions. Fetid, stale air forced him to pant through his mouth so he didn't gag on the stench. A stained mattress and chamber pot were tucked into a corner. Stacks of leather-brown books lay strewn about on a writing desk and an oriental rug. 3 other easels stood on the floor. Paint jars, brushes, and paintings, either loose or framed, overwhelmed the space. The artworks were masterpieces of all types: landscapes, portraits, still life, and somber depictions of the abyss. "Who is the leader of your delegation?" The painter dabbed his brush on his palette and applied strokes of gray to the canvas. The men moved aside for their captain. Emmanuel took a tentative step forward, despising himself. Why was he indulging this monster? The wheel lock weighed heavy. He couldn't will himself to use it, either unable to kill an almost mythical being or incapable of shooting someone in the back. "Face us," he said. Tintoretto continued painting. Ominous storm clouds loomed at the top of his canvas. "What is your name?" "Emmanuel Quattrone. Face us. I demand it." "Quattrone?" The painter grunted without turning. "Descendant of Senator Marco Niccolo Quattrone, first exalted." "I know who the traitor was." The insult to his forefather incensed Emmanuel. He raised his gun and cocked the hammer. "End him," his compatriot whispered. "Do it now." Someone pounded on the door. Frantic yelling seeped through the wood. With a shaking hand, Emmanuel aimed at the painter's head. He squeezed the trigger. As if hearing the pistol's wheel, Tintoretto shifted. The weapon discharged, emitting a cloud of smoke. The bullet flew through the canvas and struck the wall. Tintoretto dropped his artist's tools and spun. With unholy speed, he launched himself at Emmanuel. A glimpse of a thick white beard whooshed through the gunsmoke. The painter clutched Emmanuel's throat and shoved him into his comrade, slamming both against the wall. Emmanuel's head whiplashed into his friend's nose. Blood splattered Emmanuel's neck. The man slumped to the floor. Emmanuel steadied himself. The other men raised their flintlocks, but Tintoretto stole Emmanuel's rapier from its scabbard. In a flash, the painter twisted and sliced through both men's wrists. They cried out and dropped their weapons. Their reactions were short-lived, as were they. Tintoretto severed their throats before doing the same to the third man in as many seconds. All 3 collapsed. Arterial spray gushed from their lacerations. Emmanuel's friend clamped his neck, choking and writhing until the painter lodged his rapier in the man's heart. "I told you we should talk," said Tintoretto, without a hitch in his breathing, undisturbed by the blood painting his robe and floor. Emmanuel met the gaze of the man standing victoriously before him. You're a monstrosity, offspring of Satan himself." "A curious observation, since it is I who shall grant you paradise."